Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for Almost in Agreement. Hope everybody had a chance to listen to the Massey show. We went through the 4 ballot items. That was fun. That was interesting. We'll talk more about that tonight. We'll talk about whether or not Mr. Heupel is going to shove a bottle of mustard up his butt. We'll figure that out from there. There's plenty of stuff going on, and we're going to talk about it. Sam's in here with me. Max may call. I'm really confused. He said he was going to call earlier, and now he's not, and I don't know what's going on. So anyway, we're almost in agreement at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostinagreement.com. It's got Election Guide 22. It's got links to KGIS, links to Knox County Election Commission, links to the shows of the candidates that are in said election that coming up, as well as a link to that Massey show explaining the 4 ballot items. And, go to your favorite podcast provider, give us a like and share there. Tell your friends about us there. Check out the other Barbarian Production Compass Points podcast with Scott and Jesse from thecompassknox.com. They do really good work and know what's going on with all that kind of stuff too. So Sam and I are going to chat. Maybe Max will jump in. We don't know. We'll see what happens. So we're almost in agreement, people. It's showtime. Sam Lemon, what's up, my friend?
Hey.
I'm really confused. Max did say earlier he's on his way back from Kentucky, but he'll definitely call it. Like when I was like, who's in on the show tonight? Because I would have tried to call in a couple of the back burner guests I have lined up to make it.
I think he did say before he would probably call in. I don't know if it was a
right. He'll be just getting back from Kentucky. Maybe not come to the show, but at least he'll call in. Whatever. We'll see. Maybe he'll call in a little bit, and we will both stand corrected. So anyway, I don't know what's new, my friend.
Nothing new. I don't think of anything crazy happened. Hurricanes.
Have you been back into house shopping yet, or are you still just kind of laying low with what you got?
Laying low.
Word. There's been some developments. The market's cooling or whatever, so it's supposed to be less bad.
Right.
Rents are still expensive. And like one of the things that's problematic, and this is from the Henson Sale School of Home Purchasing Economics or whatever, is like the federal attempts to try to help some of the different inflationary issues is not going to help housing. If anything, it's going to make it worse. Especially the Fed just jumped another percentage point or something like that. The Fed's still pushing rates up.
I heard they were meeting to discuss a possible hike.
And they keep pushing. But, I mean, all that does is raise the cost of a mortgage, which makes it harder for people to afford a house that they couldn't afford already because the actual cost of the house has gone up.
Right.
The hope is that that'll cool the cost part down. But at the end of the day, okay, you're getting a house that is selling right now for $300,000, and maybe in 6 months, as the rates continue to rise, that house will be $225,000. But you're still going to be paying a $1,500 a month mortgage payment, whether it's $300,000 or $225,000, because the interest rates are going to make up the difference. So it's still killing the affordability of the lower mid-range housing market.
I've seen a couple stories about warning people against, I call it variable rate mortgages or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I mean, they're like, oh, it sounds great, until you, I guess, look at some of the breakdown of your payment plan, essentially.
Right, I don't know.
For the next 15, 20 years.
Right. And that, like, the determining factors for what changes rates are, like, there's no real, like, oh, well, this happened, so the rate's going up 3 points.
All right.
It's just the company decided.
It's Thursday.
Right. They decided they wanted a few more interest points or whatever. I mean, I think it's tied to something. I don't think it's completely, random, but nothing that normal people pay attention to or understand.
It's probably more like behind the scenes, like they've looked at their ledger books or whatever, and they're like, all right, we got to go up a little bit.
Right. And more to the point, okay, I understand why they did it, but does that mean I can afford a higher payment? No.
Right.
So
can I buy my way out of this? No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
I mean, that was the 08, I mean, all the foreclosures in the 08 crisis is that everybody was buying those variable rate ones because they were super cheap at the time, and then those rates started coming up, and then people couldn't afford the payment anymore. That was a lot of those in the 08 crisis.
I assumed it was just people getting into houses that they couldn't really afford, and part of that was some on the banks. Well, like, yeah, sure, you're approved.
Right, the banks were definitely
like, really?
Right, the
for $500,000?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you're good. You're good.
The rules requirements for what the banks had to have, which again, I think that's so weird. Like, why? I don't know. Well, I guess it's one of those things that's weird to me. Is that the banking industry is one of the most heavily regulated industries of all the different subsectors that the federal government gets involved in. Banking is one of the top ones, and so it really matters. I don't know, like, I guess it's because they get saved all the time if they fuck it up, like they did in the '08 crisis. Because it's like, I don't know I don't know. I'm trying to think of the logic in why the federal government regulates the banks so hard, and it's like, well, help people out.
98% of people are involved in some aspect of that banking industry.
I'm not right, because everybody has a checking account or whatever. I get that, but if it's so heavily regulated, who is it protecting? And it doesn't seem like it's protecting the individual bank user. Seems to be protecting the banks more than them.
Well, to an extent, it goes both ways.
I suppose. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of stories of how. I'm sure they're out there. I'm not saying they don't exist.
And that's when they talked about with the '08. It was, I guess, what they call predatory lending. And even talking about it now with some of the student loans was just predatory lending.
Yeah. Which apparently the Republicans are trying to figure out how to get a lawsuit or how to get a case on the books to run up to the Supreme Court so they can stop it.
Stop what?
The student loan forgiveness thing that Biden's trying to do.
Didn't it already start?
I don't know. Mine keeps going.
I think you have to get up and or you have to get on and apply for it.
I got to figure out how to do it, but I don't know. I do need to. That is on my list of shit to do, is to get on there and go through the process to figure it out. Because last week, 2 weeks ago or whatever, when we were talking about it, because of the holiday, it hadn't pulled out. Like it auto pulls out of our account for our student loan, and it hadn't pulled yet because of the holiday. And then we were recording on a Tuesday as normal, but since it hadn't pulled yet, and it usually would have pulled, like they usually pull it on like the 4th, which was Sunday. Then the holiday was Monday the 5th, and then it wasn't there on Tuesday right before we started recording. But when I got up Wednesday morning, they pulled it. It pulled overnight, Tuesday into Wednesday. So I got all excited. It's like, well, all right, now I got to figure out how to get the back pay, because they're going to refund up to the $10,000 from anything in 22. I think any payment you made in 22, or so from like.
Yeah, I saw something about that it did apply to people that have been making payments this year as well.
Right. If you made payments this year, I want to say it was March. From March until now, if you've made payments, you can get those refunded if it's not above the 10,000 max, or 20 if you have a Pell or whatever. So like for us, for example, like I think our total outstanding at the beginning of the year was like 7,000, and we've paid like 1,000 in this year, and so they'll take all of that. But if our total was 11,000 and we paid 1,000 in, they're not going to give us that 1,000 back, because whatever.
Only reimburses you up to 10,000.
So I had Massey. Did you listen to the Massey episode? I just came out,
No.
yesterday, so I understand if you didn't. It's a very fun episode. Very good. I like Miss Becky, even though she's got some problems politically, not as a person. Like, she's a fine person. I just disagree with her politically. She only wants to go medical, which is, for a Republican, that's a good start. But she only thinks medical is the way to go.
Kind of both say that she's for it and against it.
Yeah, well, which is weird. I mean, which it's funny to me is that if you go on the Republicanism of it, and it's like, well, if you're a Republican and you're pro-pot at any level, then you should be pro-full rec, because why do we need oversight or government involvement or parties involved in the process? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, as a Republican, you're like, small government, but we're going to put this into the medical field, which is one of the, which with banking are the top two governmentally involved industries in the world, or in the country at least. So I don't know. If you're a Republican and you even start the process, I feel like you should automatically go into full rec. But then they're going to. But the Republicans that do sign on to it are going to sign on to it with the special tax, which is also not very Republican of them. But that's not what I had Massey on for. I had Massey on to talk about the ballot stuff.
Right.
And as we talked about last week. Okay, let me back up. First thing, and most important thing that I learned from my conversation with Becky yesterday was that the way ballot. So there is one more thing in the way ballot items work that I didn't quite understand when she explained it to me. So obviously it goes through the process in the houses of 2 consecutive sessions, which is a minimum of 3 years, and after those 2 first sessions, 51% majority in both houses gets to the next session, it has to be a 70-30 or better to get on the ballot. And then when it gets on the ballot, it has to be on a gubernatorial ballot. It has to be on the next gubernatorial ballot. And there's one more little weirdism detail that she explained to me that I didn't know was there. For a ballot item, for a constitutional ballot item to go into effect, it has to get 51% yes votes. And those 50, it has to be not necessarily, how do I explain this? So the total number of votes in the governor's race on November 8th, if that total number is 100,000, then for a yes to pass, it has to be 50,001.
Okay.
So it has to be, so of all the people that vote in the governor's race, that total number divided by 2 plus 1, yeses. Because no's don't matter. If you skip it or vote no, it's the same thing.
But it goes off the number of people that voted or the number of people that voted specifically in the governor's race?
Just in the governor's race.
Huh.
So the total turnout for the election, it doesn't matter if for some strange, crazy-ass reason, sticking with 100,000 in the gubernatorial race, but for some reason District 18 pulls 125,000, it's still the 100,000 is the benchmark for the ballot items. So just to try to repeat that a little less convoluted, the total number of votes in the governor's race, regardless of which governor candidate you vote for, whether it's Lee, Dr. Martin, or any of the 8 independents, you add all those up to a final number, and all 4 of these ballot items have to get half of that number plus 1. It yeses to pass. And so it is important that if you want one of these things to pass, that you not only vote yes yourself, but you've got to get people that are going out to vote to not skip it. And especially Becky's. Becky's is number 2, and we're the only state in the nation who does not have a temporary incapacitation for the governor program on the books. Every other state has some sort of program, and they're all the logical one. What is it? Speaker Sexton, Randy McNally, Vice. I think he's
Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. The Lieutenant Governor, if Lee dies, takes over.
Right.
But that little gap space in the middle there, which I think she said in the history of Tennessee, there's 2 times where it might have applied, and so it's a very rare item to have to worry about. But we're the only state that doesn't have a written set in our state constitution what to do if X.
Right.
And the interesting part of it is it can be a challenge in mental fitness, essentially, to put this in place, too. And so that's one of the reasons why it's super wordy, is that apparently there's a governor like 20 years ago that was selling pardons in the state. And she said something basically like, if that had broke sooner, that this could have been a device used to say, hey, we think he's mentally ill, because only a crazy person would think they could sell pardons and get away with it. So we need to put him under this temporary capacity. I mean, you'd think you could recall him, or there's other processes in place to go after that, because I would assume it's illegal.
Right.
But this could have been a method to put that in there. And so the question I had for that is like, well, could this be a method for the Democrats, say, who don't like Lee, to interfere with his process, just to say, hey, we think Governor Lee's lost his shit. We need to have him he's temporarily incapacitated. We need to take him off of governorship until we can settle this thing.
We think he's crazy for thinking this.
Right. Exactly. And so, but the way the process, and again, this is it is a whole page of the ballot just for number 2. And so it's super wordy. And so for the sake of our listeners who give a shit about it, just to me, just say yes, because yes is it's this tiny little gap fill on if Governor Lee gets hit by a car jogging down the street, because he's a healthy dude, I don't know, but he's jogging down the road and he gets hit by a car and falls into a coma, and we don't know if it's going to be a couple days or a couple weeks. There's no legal process in the state of Tennessee with what to do with that. Now, if he gets hit by the car and dies, yes, we have a process for that. If he gets shot and dies, there's a process for that. But if he gets shot but is on a ventilator and being kept alive by the machine, and we're not sure if he can make it through or not, there's no legal process. The assumption is the Lieutenant Governor, Randy McNally, would take the seat, at least as currently stands. But there's no rule in play, and so there could be some jockeying for, I'm going to take over this seat because I can. I don't know. Like Speaker Sexton could claim, I get to take the seat. I'm a sheriff, and
right. I won't answer anybody but the governor, and the governor's asleep right now.
Right, so I get to be the governor. I don't know, right, it'd be a weird thing to see happen, but anyway, that's the gist of number 2. So yes on number 2, to me, because it's a gap fill. Number 4 is another kind of gimme. I remember you were the one that looked it up. You were reading through the state constitution, and I remember you were saying you thought it was weird that in the state constitution it said that there can be no religious test given to a candidate.
Right.
That is strictly prohibited by the state of Tennessee. You cannot ask somebody about their faith or whether they're you can ask them about their faith, but you can't. You can't have a, hey, tell me about your religion, and that disqualifies you for the seat. But then later on, there's a thing down there that says members of the clergy or a paid pastor or anything like that cannot run for a seat. And it's like, well, those things don't match up. And so number 4 is basically saying, I don't remember the exact wording. Preachers can.
They cannot be prohibited from, I guess,
right,
from running or being a member, right, if they are a leader of a church,
right. And what we were talking about last week too is that structurally it changes nothing because it's already federally unconstitutional to preclude somebody from running for office because of their profession. If that's faith or profession or not. So it's already federally unconstitutional. So if I were a preacher at a church, I could still run for office right now, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. So number 4, again, to me, is a yes.
Well, according to our state constitution as it stands now, you could not.
But the U.S. Constitution overrides that, and the U.S. Supreme Court has stated that that's unconstitutional. And so number 4 on the ballot items is just to clean this thing up and get it off the Constitution, because we have to go through the process to take it out of the Constitution, even though the federal Supreme Court has said it's unconstitutional federally.
That's what I kept asking lawyer Jamie about. I was confused as to when one supersedes the other, because marijuana laws, the state constitution can supersede the federal.
It doesn't, but it doesn't. It's still federally illegal. You could be in Colorado right now, and the FBI can walk into your house and arrest you on drug trafficking charges.
Right.
They just choose not to.
Right.
But it's still technically federally illegal. You're still technically breaking federal law.
But I think to run for state office, you could not at the moment. If you were running for federal office, which state is still kind of federal, but if you're running just for state office.
Okay, so if you're Mark Harmon, Tim Burchett running for Tennessee right. House District 2.
Right, I think that's when national federal laws would come into place.
No, I think I think, like, as far as election laws go, as far as balloting, precincting, jurisdictions, voting districts, all that stuff, that is handled at the state level. But the federal government still has complete oversight of the who can and can't run. Like the state of Tennessee couldn't, on a whim, decide that women aren't allowed to run for office and put that in the state constitution. The federal government would come in and say, no, that is unconstitutional. You cannot exclude people from running for office just because they are female.
Okay.
And so, basically, again, the moral as is explained to me is it doesn't matter. That one literally changes nothing, because already, if you're a preacher, you can already run for office. And the state somebody can bring it up and be like, well, it says here in the state constitution, and whomever you're complaining to, whether, because, like, if I remember right, Chris David said, if you have a complaint about an election process or something like that, you call the DA's office. So you call Sharm Allen's office and be like, hey, I think that this person voted twice or something like that. Like anything election related criminally, it would go to the DA's office. So again, let's say I'm a preacher at a church and I run for District 18, and you say, hey, it says in the Constitution he can't run. You're going to go to Sharm Allen with that and say, hey, it says clearly right here in the state Constitution, and Sharm's going to look at you and say, yes, it does say that in the state Constitution, but the United States Supreme Court has overridden that, saying that is unconstitutional in the United States of America to do that, so I cannot continue with charges on this. And so number 4 is just cleanup. It's just get that off the books because it's not really there anyway. Number 2 is the Becky's incapacitated one. Number 3 was the slavery one. And this one I find really interesting. I'm curious. We talked about it at length, and I think it's again. I'm going to vote yes on this one for sure. This one basically says there's an like the current Constitution gives the exception for a criminal who has been duly convicted of a crime can be forced to work. And so, like, old school chain gang kind of shit, digging ditches or whatever. That in the state of Tennessee, it is currently legal for the prison system, private or public, to put inmates to work involuntarily without pay. Now, if this passes, it has to be voluntary. It has to have pay involved. And I don't know exactly how the pay involved would work. I don't know if they're required a minimum wage like our minimum wage. I'm sure there's some details down in there that's different.
Doubt it.
But it at least, I don't know. I feel like that's reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's like my joke with Becky was like, well, if I get a DUI, I can voluntarily choose to do community service instead of jail time, and I'm volunteering to go clean up, the roadsides and pick up litter or whatever. But that's a voluntary exchange. I'm getting something of value by not having to spend a weekend in jail. Instead, I get to spend the weekend cleaning up trash. But that's I volunteer for the difference.
Right.
And so that would still be a thing that can be done. It's just not
mandatory.
They can't again on the DUI charge, they can't say you have to go pick up litter. You could if you want to, and right. They would be it is equal in value to this. You get 36 hours in jail or 12 hours of community service.
Right. They can order you to community service, but they can't. I don't think you have your option of
which community service.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it has to be order you to community service in lieu of something of value, which would be not going to jail for a weekend. I don't think they can
Sometimes
just say,
you get both.
I'm just saying the way I understand, but the way that reads to me is they can't say you have to do work. They can say you can do work or you can go to jail for the weekend.
All right. The difference between being sentenced to jail and then being told you have to go do this, this, or this versus being sentenced to so many hours of community service.
I don't know. That's an interesting little subset of it. I'd be curious to know what the actual answer to that is, because I feel like to me, if you are sentenced to community service, that is being forced to work. It's not an option. You're not choosing to work against a different, similar value sentence.
Depends on what you want to consider work.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's hard work, easy work. That's not the point. It is some type of work in community service, whether you're feeding homeless or picking up litter or whatever. Or taking phone calls at some call center or whatever. I don't know, whatever the community service assignment is. But that's number 3, and I think yes on that, because I think any involuntary servitude should be criminal except for parents and their kids. I think parents should be allowed to make their kids do work without any consequence or pay. Like, go mow the grass, kid. I don't care. Deal with it. That's the only excuse. It's the only excuse I can think of.
Deal with it.
Do it. Do it, or I won't feed you. Which that then would actually theoretically become criminal. But
right.
And then number 1, the big one, is exactly as I described it last week. Nothing changes. But the ability to change it later is what changes. And so I'm still on the fence on it. I think I'm probably going to abstain or say no to 1. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to say yes to 1. No, fuck. No, I'm saying no to 1. Sorry, no to 1. Even though I'm not a big union fan or whatever, I don't... Like Becky described it the way you were taking it, as far as, as the employee, you get the choice on whether you want to join the union or not, which I get that, and I don't disagree with that and wholesale, but at the end of the day, it weakens a union's ability to function. And I think it would be weird if you went to work at a union shop and didn't join the union. Now, to be forced to pay dues to the union, I think is a little problematic. But to at least be a member of the union where you are represented by and the union answers to you when a situation comes up and they're like, how do you guys want to deal with this thing? That you are part of the union and you get to be involved in it. But paying dues, I think that's where I get a little fuzzy on it. I'm really kind of stuck on this.
See how a union could require you to pay fees for a union you're not part of.
I don't know. I mean, some unions, the managers pay, like it's paid for by the business, but I would assume that that's paid for in lieu of amount of wages. Like every employee is a $15 an hour employee. Well, every employee is a $14 an hour employee, and the union gets $1 an hour. And that may be in the contract with the union. I don't know. But at least it looks like on paper that the company is paying the union, but it's really coming out of total
Year
wages.
pay,
Yeah.
We, quote unquote, are
right.
paying.
But to me, I'm saying no on one because I don't think it's appropriate that if the state changes mood, if the state of Tennessee starts shifting left or shifting middle, where we get a bunch of independents or whatever, and it becomes a thing where people want to unionize in the state and want to do that stuff, I don't think it's appropriate that it's a 3 to 8 year process for future legislations to change the way employment law works in the state. Although even though I generally functionally agree with the idea of what this thing is putting out, I just don't think it's appropriate to hamstring future legislative bodies to be able to do something about something that the community may want.
Right.
Like there may be a wave of candidates that are super union candidates, and they all get voted in, and they cannot do something about unions until they go through this 3 to 6, maybe 8 year process of changing. Like Becky said, she started working on the governor's incapacitated one in 2016.
Wow.
You know, just like the first couple of times she presented or something, like it just kind of got pushed aside. Nobody was really paying attention, and I can't remember who she said started working with her on it and really helped get traction and all that kind of stuff. But she said it took her, I mean, we're looking at 6 years right now to get this thing all set and ready and now on the books in front of us. And hopefully she can get enough votes to get it fixed. So that's the 4 ballot items.
Yay.
So for me, it's a no, yes, yes, yes as of right now. I'm still brewing on number 1. I'm still a little bit obviously going back and forth on the fence, but I do think the handicapping of future legislative bodies on this issue is inappropriate. So I'm thinking no on 1.
Yeah. Robots could be taken over by then. How are we going to fight the robots?
I mean,
take 6 years to get the robots out of there.
I mean, maybe. I mean, like, who knows? Like, it depends on what we define robots as and whether they're employees or whether they're property of the company.
They're doing work for next to no pay.
Right. And we want to make sure they can't unionize, and we need to go further than the Constitution sets up.
Right.
I meant to ask her, and I forgot, that if a constitutional item like this goes into play, does it automatically wipe the regular state law version of it off the books, or does it still sit there? So, like, let's say this Amendment 1 gets in, because somewhere in the state law is already the same exact idea of this one.
Right.
So let's say this one gets through, and then in the future, these legislative bodies go to change it. Do they need to change that one law and the constitutional thing, or just change the constitutional thing and it's taken care of?
Wondering how it would be structurally. You would think they would
either
change the wording of whatever they are amending,
right,
or they would put like a
it,
footnote and have it indent again right under that.
Yeah, that this entire law stays on the books but is invalid. But I would think I say that I would think that if you're going through the process, the first thing you would do as the legislative body would be to change the original law and insert this constitutional amendment, start the process, do those at the same time. So that law falls off the regular books, and then you wait a session, get the second session in, then the gubernatorial race, and then you have a statewide vote on the item. I would think that if you're going after this item, you're gonna know the other laws that are on the books for it, and you're gonna be going after those in that time period while you're going through the constitutional process. But again, to me, I think it's inappropriate. It's the same thing that I bitched about on these on this trigger law stuff. I don't like the idea of you passing a law that may have consequences down the line that you don't have to be around for. And this one's the backwards version of it, but I think it's weird.
Welcome to politics.
Oh, duh. But that's ballot items 101. So that's the most important update I have for this week. Heupel may or may not shove a bottle of mustard up his ass.
Oh.
Pretty sure that's a hoax. But it's a funny one.
Are you pretty sure?
It's making its round. I have seen it nowhere but a screenshot on people's Facebook pages. I went to YouTube to look for it because I would figure if he is standing there on the podium making that quote, that people pulled that clip and shared it a gajillion times with the clip. But all I've seen of it is the still shot with the quote underneath it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, 99.9% sure it's not real.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But it's a funny quote. It's going to beat... so for those listening that haven't seen it yet, I expect y'all will see years of built-up frustration out there on the field. This isn't the Tennessee team of old. We won't roll over and play dead. I expect to come out in front of a sold-out crowd at Neyland Stadium and dominate from start to finish. If we don't win this by at least 30, I'll stick a bottle of French's mustard up my ass on national television. Quote, Josh Heupel, Tennessee head coach football.
Is it really a quote if they don't put it around it? I mean, I see they've got them both at the top.
Yeah, I don't know.
Does that make it a quote?
I don't know. I would bet that he said something that he expects these guys to come out and play. It's a great atmosphere. We're going to go out there. This is our time. We have the team. We have a team to beat Florida this time. This isn't us. This isn't the old. Yeah, we can play. We can keep up with Florida of the past where we knew we were all going to lose. But this is a team that can beat them, which I think technically is true. We've been playing pretty solid football. So, Heupel.
The checker's coming back.
Doing the checkerboards in the stands. It's fun. I think the middle school is doing Orange and White Day on Thursday. Half day Wednesday. I need to look at it officially.
Thought I heard they were sprinkling some of those in this year.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about it, and I believe that this entire first semester, first half of the year, they have like 5 weeks that they have a full 5 days. Like, going back in the calendar, let's see here. Let's go back in time. First day of school was August 8th. That was a half day. And then, so first week of school, they had a half day on the first day. Second week of school, they had a half day on Wednesday. Third week of school was a full week. Fourth week of school was a full week. That's 2. Fifth week of school had Labor Day. Sixth week of school was a full. This week is week 7. We got a half day. Week after that's a full week. Full week. Then we have fall break. Full week. Full week. Full week. Election day, they're out of school. So what did that give us? 7 full weeks, 8 full weeks. Half day, Thanksgiving break. Full week. And then 2 full weeks in December. So like 10 full weeks. All right, so I overestimated it. But there's a lot of... Those little half days just kind of snuck in here and there. It's problematic. Not problematic, just complicated.
Maybe you counted it backwards. There was 5 weeks that
there's a lot
are not going to be full.
Yeah, there's a lot of unfull weeks. Trying to keep up with all that, whatever. And so, but apparently the half days are only half days for students. That is when teachers do their continued learning programs. So the teachers finish the day, have lunch, and then they go to classes for continued learning or like what in-service time, stuff like that they normally would do. So Biden said that we will defend Taiwan with troops again. It's the 3rd time he said that, point blank.
Yeah.
And every single time he says it, the White House and the Secretary of State, or State Department rather, like, nah, it's not our policy.
It is, but it isn't.
I mean, it is because the president said so. He's the commander-in-chief of the Army. Now, when it comes to blows, whether he does or doesn't, who knows? But at least the guy who's supposed to be in control, the top general of the armies, says that if they do that, we're doing this, then the policy is if they do that, we're doing this. Which, I don't know. This Ukraine thing's getting weird. Like I'm not upset by it, but I'm surprised how much offense the Ukrainians have pulled out as of late. And whether or not, that turns Putin into the wounded dog and does something really stupid.
Well, I mean, people are going to fight harder for their actual homeland, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
there's mixed reports of what's going on the Russian side.
Apparently, generally speaking, in like war terms, it is easier to defend a position even if you've recently taken it than it is to take a position that is being defended. And so for all that land that Russia had taken and was defending and the Ukrainians to come in and take it back is a big deal, like militarily, tactically speaking.
Yeah.
Apparently, Zelensky is asking Biden for longer range missiles. He wants to put missiles into Crimea, which could be a problem. Because according to Putin and the Russians, Crimea is...
They were trying to take it back over. I don't know if they've gained ground there or not.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, according to Russians, Crimea is part of Russia. And how does Putin respond when U.S. missiles are now...
Well, I mean, it was quote-unquote annexed by Russia.
Right. But if you went to the Kremlin and said, is Crimea part of Russia? They're going to say yes.
Well, if you asked them before they took it, they would have said yes.
Well, yeah.
But before that, it was...
But I would say, okay, I'm sorry. If people living in Crimea, are they Russian citizens or are they a foreign national? I would think they would say those are Russians that live there. And that it is part of Russia. Moral of the story is we put a U.S. missile fired by the Ukrainians hits Crimea. It's a different war conversation than we're in right now.
I think we've already sent missiles into...
Right,
I think they've already launched missiles at targets in Crimea.
Have they? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't think.
I
didn't think we'd given them anything long range enough to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying. Okay. You looked at it like, yeah. Like what missiles? Tell me more. Tell me the specs of the fucking missiles.
They're not that far away. They can get it close enough.
I'd have to pull up the map or whatever, but Russia's got a bunch of territory around Crimea that they are controlling now, so it's not like it's a border town shooting it over there. It's further inside Ukraine that they're launching from. Because this whole offensive is in the northern half. That was one of the tactical things that everybody was praising about it, is that the Russians pushed down their better stuff down into the south side of Ukraine, where the line was, or whatever you want to call it, because that's where they thought the Ukrainians were going to launch this offensive into the south side. And they went north and kind of wrapped around, and they're now kind of next to and above.
I would say at this point they're trying to protect supply lines.
I don't know. I don't like it. It scares me.
That's definitely crazy. So I think they had stories today that I think Russia announced that the 4 breakaway regions that they're getting ready to vote, I think this week, on
who they want to be, who they want to go to live with mom or dad.
Yeah.
Like a divorced child's.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, and the assumption is, and this is one to me, this is one of those things to me where I don't know, like I don't even know how to think about it realistically. Because the assumption is, well, it's the Russians. They're not going to be fair and free elections. Of course, if the Russians put these elections on, the Russians are going to win.
Right.
So, like, that's
what everybody's already said, basically.
Right. Well, but I mean, it was the same complaint about Trump when he was already complaining about not Russian interference, but election fraud and stuff like that before the election. Well, then it doesn't matter what the result is. People that believe in you are going to think that thing happened, whether there's any proof of it or not. And so the same way that Trump tainted the election, the U.S. media is tainting the ability for Russia to hold a free and fair election, which is not necessarily untrue. I'm not saying it is true or not, but it doesn't matter. Like, it does not matter.
I don't think it's a good comparison. But.
Okay. The results of the election don't matter because it doesn't say anything, is my point. Like, it doesn't say anything. It says the Russians say that the people that we conquered want us here.
Right.
Well, of course they do, because you put the election on.
Right.
Now, how do we get a real election in place where we actually get to hear from the people that are actually there and feel like we actually know something? We don't. We can't. So we're running on the assumption that these people are still involuntarily invaded peoples. But it's possible. Is it not possible? I mean, it could be possible. I don't know.
It's possible.
Ukraine as a whole doesn't want to be Russian, but it's possible that these breakaway regions want to be Russian. That was a thing before the invasion, right? Like there were some groups that were politically agitating to go back to Russia and not be part of Ukraine pre-war.
There's some that had identified, I guess, culturally, felt like they were more Russian than
right.
Ukrainian.
Yeah.
But it's still just kind of like a weird thing, because you're going back 30 years when they all were Russians. Some of them would call themselves Ukrainians because they were from that area of...
Yeah, I don't know my Cold War history enough to really quite understand. As far as
a whole lot of it, but basically they were all part of Russia before you had the Soviet bloc break up into individualized countries now.
Right. But
even then, it was kind of... People called themselves from that different areas. You know, they were Belarusian because they were from that area.
That is now Belarus.
Right, basically.
Which is... Rus is like a Nordic way to say Russia or whatever.
I always think it meant like beautiful Russia or something. Bella, I don't know.
I don't know what Bella... I mean, Bella would be Italian for beautiful, but I don't know. But my moral is, I don't know where the pre-World War I and II Russian border was. To expand into taking all the bloc countries and then falling back to the old border.
Let's go back to World War I. You had Austria-Hungary, which I think it's kind of own larger country in itself.
Which are now separate countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to go back and look at how many times, even Napoleonic times when he took over.
Right, and did the standard dumb thing, which is... That's what an interesting thing, too. One of the people that I listen to that's been talking about it, it's like there's a lot of action going on right now in this conflict because they got about a month left before it's time to take the winter break. Because even in 2022, you don't fight. You don't fight in the winter. You don't try to move stuff around. You don't try to do all that tactical war shit.
You think you run into less mud. I mean, yes, you've got to deal with cold temperatures, but these people live there year-round as it is. I mean,
it's been true for millennia, so why would it stop now? So the Queen died. We haven't talked about this on the show.
Yes, she did.
I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. Like you're the closest thing to an Anglophile I know.
An Anglophile.
You're kind of a little bit. I mean, you're an English soccer junkie. Well, not really, but you used to be more. You're into English stuff.
Yeah.
More than I am. I don't know. So I'm saying compared to me, you're an Anglophile at least.
Okay.
I don't know. Like I don't really like. I saw a cool graphic that kind of showed the history of the monarchy and what was considered England, like under each person's reign. And it's kind of weird because it starts with this little tiny map, and then you got some the Viking King, Bluetooth. I can't remember his real name, but he went by Bluetooth. But he was a Viking king that came over and took over like half the country, and then all this different stuff goes back and forth. But then there's was it like Richard had like a big chunk of France when he was king. Big chunk of France was they had conquered, and it was like Normandy and all that stuff was part of Great Britain or England or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like as it continues, the map keeps zooming out because it's like, well, now we got India, and then Hong Kong pops in, and then Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, and then the Americas, and then Canada. And then the Americas come off, but Canada stays there and whatever.
Right.
And so it's an interesting history for sure.
It's crazy to think that an island nation that small conquered that much.
Well, technology is the son bitch.
And I'll say with probably the same as most other large armies is as you take over land, you're accumulating all those extra soldiers as well.
That's one of the things
that was like, how do they man that many places all throughout the world?
I think that's one of the things to me that when we go into these histories we don't think about is that we don't think about like me and you, if Canada took over the United States like right now, not much is going to change for me and you. Maybe we have to learn French to deal in the business offices or whatever. But, I mean, for normal people, not much changes through all this kind of shit. Maybe you get conscripted and go to war to go conquer the next whatever you get conscripted for it. But, we go to war with China, you don't think we're going to get the draft kicking back in? Probably. We get into heavy wartime, we'll start talking. The draft conversation will come back up. So whether it's under the U.S. banner or something else, conscription's still a real thing that could happen at any time, more or less. But other than that, you just kind of go about your life. For most people.
Yeah, depending. I mean, it depends on what laws are changed. I mean, when many other countries took over other countries, they essentially instilled their own laws.
Yeah, but I'd still say the basics are the basics are kind of more generally the same. Maybe, but again, like you said, if you're this small country, you have to bring bodies into the fold to do all the things you're doing. And so you're not going to be like, well, you're a French family, so you're a lower class of citizen. Well, no, you're now under our banner, so you're the same as every other English person, so we can use you for these other things.
Maybe.
You're
a conquered people. Generally, they're not welcomed warmly once you're...
Right, but you can't conquer and demonize and then expect to recruit them to help you with the greater cause that you're working on. You conquer and say, look, nothing changes for you. You keep farming your farm. But if we need you, we'll call you up. But the French would have done that too, so what's the difference? I think that's a fairly universal truth, to be honest.
I mean, with India, India already had their caste system. So, I mean, really all they had to do was go in and, make the higher classes fine, and then everyone else was okay with being a lower subjugated class.
But, I mean, I guess that's kind of the overarching point is I think we're all subjugated at some... I think if you're not of a certain ilk, even in America, you're a subjugated class. And we're going to be subjugated by the French or the British or the U.S. upper class. We're subjugated either way.
Possibly.
So what's the difference? I mean, that's I guess the moral. I mean, you're not wrong. You could have
Canada could come in and align with one major political party versus the other.
Right, or you could have Israel come over here, and all of a sudden we all have to be Jewish or something crazy religious wise like that. There are some items that I guess would change, but again, like for the general day to day, not much. I don't think much changes unless you're in the region where the shit's going down.
All right.
Which we wouldn't likely be. Well, nowadays we would be because we're close to Oak Ridge and we would get nuked in the process, and hopefully we die quickly and get it over with. Sticking to that point. One of the other things I just remember this, going back to the Becky Massey thing.
Yeah.
She is chairing the transportation and something. So she's overseeing, road projects and shit like that. It's part of her new title this next session.
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking, one of the things that they're trying to figure out is how they're going to continue to get... The state is going to continue to bring in revenue as, I think she called it, cafe cars start becoming required. Apparently in the next 15, I can't remember what she said, and I apologize, somewhere between 10 and 20 years, the state of Tennessee is going to require all new cars to be 60-plus miles a gallon. Which, you can have your feelings on that either way. Whatever. But... the majority of the money that goes into infrastructure projects comes from the state gas tax. So if the average car is now 2 to 3 times average miles per gallon, gas tax either has to go up to keep that money coming in, or there has to be a different revenue stream. And so she is currently participating in a pilot program just to test the theory or whatever on a mileage-based car tax. And the pilot program she's messing with is a chip. So you plug a thing into your car, and it tracks miles and reports it to the state. And then at monthly, yearly, whatever it is, you pay your mileage fee to drive in the state of Tennessee.
I don't know about that.
I don't like that either. Or you can pay a flat rate with your registration that they figure out whatever. So for me, I'm taking the flat rate, at least for one of my cars, because that's the car I do the day job on. And I drive a ton for.
All right.
But I'm more not okay with the idea that that I'm have to put a chip in my car where they can know and track me. Either way, I don't know. I did throw the train at her. I was like, hey, we get some trains going on, just have less cars on the road so it doesn't do as much damage, so we don't need to raise as much money.
All right.
She didn't really jump on that. I would love to be able to get to Nashville. I would love a train that goes Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis. This is selfish. We should include Tri-Cities and Chattanooga, but screw those guys.
Yeah, I think Atlanta's got an Amtrak station.
Yeah, apparently there was something. The Amtrak comes all the way down to Bristol, Virginia, but Tennessee wouldn't get on board with some sort of program and pay their portion of it to bring it into the state. I would like to go.
Because it costs us a lot of money. You either have to go through the valley or you're
right. I don't know how.
knocking through a lot of
I don't know the
limestones.
details. She laughed at me when I said something about the infrastructure bill. She said it was basically worthless.
The federal or state?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Biden's infrastructure bill. The only thing she said was a real positive about it is it's a 5-year thing instead of a single year. So apparently the U.S. Department of Transportation has a yearly thing where they send out a sum to each state for whatever reason. And so the Biden one's a 5-year one, so that they have now the next 5 years of planning, but it's about the same amount of money they get every year anyway. Is what I understood it to be when she said it. So I don't know. I don't know the details. I don't know the background on it, but that's kind of how she responded. Like I was like, "You laughing at me on my own show?" She's like, "No, I'm just laughing at you at how ridiculous because Washington makes it sound like they're sending a bunch of money down here where they're really not." And I was like, "Well, yeah. I mean, that's what it sounded like to me when everybody was talking about it. It's a $1 trillion infrastructure bill."
Okay, so they're sending money, but they're not sending money.
They're sending money, but it's not more money than they normally send anyway. Is what she's saying. It's a little bit more than they normally send, but like $100 million more a year, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not a lot of money when you get into building roads.
I wonder if we didn't apply for more,
I don't know.
or if they just.
She also said, she also says like, well, we're not saying no to the money, but I'm just saying, she was just like, it's just not that. It's not as big a deal as it sounds like when people talk about it. But we're definitely taking it.
I'm sure we need it. I'm sure there's plenty of infrastructure to fix.
Well, so District 6 people, your State Senator Becky Massey is the chair of the Transportation Subcommittee. So if you got infrastructure stuff, she's apparently, and I knew this about her. She's been wanting to do another bypass for Knoxville forever, and she's pushing that back. She wants to go from like Watt Road to.
That's what I've heard proposed.
Yeah, like Watt Road to like Rocky Top. And then a second phase would be that same section over to more or less where 8140 come together.
Yeah, 'cause 275 and 640 were kind of supposed to be, but it just kind of takes you around the heart of downtown. I mean, 275, you literally split off in downtown.
Right. Well, 275 is just your going straight up 75 from downtown or straight into downtown access, whatever.
All right, so I guess 640 is supposed to be a little bit more of a roundabout.
Right, because it'd be weird if you were trying to go like from Lexington to Knoxville and you had to take the bypass around Knoxville because there was no interstate that came straight in, so that's why 275 exists. I guess. I don't know. It's a mess. But so I don't know. I mean, that's got to be multiple $1 billion to build an interstate from Watt Road to Emory or whatever it is up on the north end of the county.
Yeah, I don't know where all they would run it.
Yeah. Yeah, but the goal taking, like apparently she said the way station at Campbell Station, Watt Road area, is the busiest way station in the nation. And that we like...
Is that why so many of them skip it? They're like, fuck that.
Yeah. And we have the, like, I can't remember, she had like, as far as like truck counts, and it's all truck conversation, which is a whole nother subset of conversation, but the truck conversation being the bigger part. And then she said something about out-of-state people doing all the damage to our roads because we have a lot of people that travel in or through the state to get from Ohio's to Florida's and stuff like that. And they do damage because everybody does damage when they're driving. How do we tax those people? Because we can't tax them on gas.
Turn it into a toll road.
I mean, I don't know. If it's $100 in the state of Tennessee.
Right. If you ain't from around here, it's going to cost you.
It's $50 to come back.
Unless you want to go all the way around.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I wish I had the mathematical fortitude to understand these budgets at all and how much, and just understanding how much things cost. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I get in trouble with the school one all the time. It's a $600 million budget. And I just can't, I just can't rationalize that into functional, logical numbers for our school system.
I was reading one opinion piece where somebody was talking about the Because they started kind of talking about the loan forgiveness, but then just talked about cost of college in general. And they equated most of it to just bloated administrative cost in colleges.
Sure.
I want to say they gave UT as an example. He's like, you've got a chancellor, a vice chancellor, and all these, assistants to this person and all these other people, these kind of extra positions that kind of get brought on. Multiple vice presidents of this area, that area, this area.
Yeah. And they're talking about splitting up the School of Arts and Sciences, which would make more of those.
I saw some of that.
I get it and I don't get it. It
was like a restructuring, basically.
I mean, because the college. Okay, so you have the College of Business, you have the law school, you have all these different. You have the medical school, you have all these separations because they're specialties and they're functionals, and then you have arts and sciences, which goes from band and music majors, music ed majors, all the way to physicists, rocket scientists, biologists. That's all in the same school.
Right.
And so one of the things that the Compass guys were talking about this week is, a lot of the teachers don't really like it. A lot of the professors don't like it. Even the science professors, because one of the things they're concerned about is that the hard sciences make money. You got these biologies that are getting major grant funding to do research on X, Y, and Z.
Right, nuclear engineering.
Right. Since it's inside this College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Arts and Sciences gets that grant funding. And then delegates it where it needs to go. And obviously it's a grant, so there's rules on how you have to do it and stuff like that. But
I think the grant would go to whoever the grant applicant was.
But it still has to go. It goes to the school first, and then goes to where it's supposed to go. And so there's, again, talking about administrative costs. There's, that goes into that college's budget total. Now the biology department might get all or more of that, but then the school may take out some of the other standard funding because it's biology just got a $10 million grant. We're going to pull $1 million in this other thing out of that college for this year's budget and spend it over here. But anyway, one of the concerns is that the arts and sciences, so one of them is apparently the Haslam School of Business has stopped requiring foreign language credits as part of their degree program because they're separated from that school. Which, I took foreign language. I had to do it when I was in the Haslam Business School. It was really funny because they were talking about the U.S. News and World Report college rankings that came out.
Yeah.
And, the UT's down two positions or something like that. And there's people talking about it, whatever. But, as they went into, specifics, the UT's College of Business, Haslam's College of Business logistics program is, top 5 in the nation. It's been top 5 in the nation for 30 years. And I'm sitting here and they're talking about it on the show, and I'm like, hey, I got one of those. Look what it did for me. But anyway, so I don't know. I think, but the concern is that if they separate arts and sciences, then maybe biology won't require foreign language credits anymore. And it's so the foreign language teachers are mad that they might lose their job because there's going to be less schools requiring foreign languages. So the question is there value to the foreign language for a biology student? I would think Latin might be useful if you're a biology student.
Yeah.
But, for the actual day-to-day function of the job that you're going to get as a biology graduate, I don't know. I don't know if it may not be useful to them, and so why are they wasting time and money forcing those students into arts classes that they don't need to do? And when the complaint on the other side is it's so goddamn expensive for kids to go to college and get their degree anymore, and they're required by this college to take these credits that are useless, that cost more money for them to take more loans out for. It's maybe it's time to trim some of that. I mean, there's way bigger problems in the school loans conversation than that specific, but that could be a thing that could help a little bit.
I mean, there's an argument for teaching and taking classes outside of your main core. Of you just being a well-rounded individual.
I mean, I agree in the high school levels. I don't know how I feel about that in the college one. I get it. I'm not disagreeing with you wholesale. I'm just not sure where I sit on that one.
I mean, not much. I mean, maybe not as much as it's done in high school, but I think at least to some extent.
I agree.
You could even focus more. On,
right.
If you're
I don't disagree.
Taking business, you can take kind of a history or some kind of business history that goes back 200 or 300 years of business practices.
I got a music minor I had a business major with a music minor, It's because I was a music ed major and
Right.
I had enough credits that I had like one class to take and I could get my minor.
Right. That's generally what most people do is they're like, okay, well, what's my second most popular classes that I've taken? Like, okay, that's going to be my minor.
Right. If you can get it through the catalog and make it so, or it's just I don't know. Like I don't. And my experience was a different experience than other people's experience in college. Or that I don't know where the value was in that education. I met my wife there. I worked on the strip where I met my business partner. The college experience was a definite benefit to me as a human being. But as an education, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure where I sit on it. And some of that's, probably the majority of that's my fault. I didn't take it very seriously. I didn't put forth the effort to use the tools and information that was available to me to get myself into a better place as far as finding work and stuff like that after school. But I don't know. Like, I'm not sure I understand what the point of college is for most people, unless you have a specific. Like if you're going to medical school because you want to be a doctor, yes, I get that. That makes sense. But to go because you graduated high school doesn't make sense to me anymore. And that's what I did. And I think that's what I got that out of it. I got the okay.
Okay, I did that.
Right. Like
I did what most people wanted me to do.
Right. I did what I was supposed to do. I don't know what that means, but I did it. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how things shift over time. I mean, I think that the push towards the trades is a valuable push that's going on. I don't know, but I don't know. I still think at least your version of the German model, whether it's completely accurate or not. Max was talking about the English version that he'd read about or seen something on or whatever. Oh, I think we need to get out of high school sooner. I think we need to get out of the standard public school system sooner. Because I think we need to. I think the need to start forcing isn't the word I want to use, but it's the best I can think of. Forcing the issue of what are you going to do needs to start sooner. Like, what are you going to do? You going to play sports? Probably not. You could try. Some people are, but most people aren't. But what are you going to do needs to start sooner. And you need to start, that decision needs to be made, and a path to go towards that thing needs to start earlier. Because I think at 18 it's too late. Because at 18, I mean, you could be functional to go out and work and do, and then get your work experience for the rest of your life that makes you valuable as an employee.
Right.
But you can start that at 18 instead of 22 or 23.
I mean, is that more that parents just should sit down with their kids earlier, or should it be upon like school guidance counselors to
I think it's
maybe spend a little more time?
I think it's something that the structure of the school needs to be part of it. I think there's a lot of things that need to go in play. I think guidance counselors need to be one. I think parents need to be one. I think community organizations, whether they're active businesses in the community or nonprofits and stuff like that, they need to be a part of that. Where you could show people, you can show kids, this is what we do. This is what this job is. Maybe you don't come and work for me specifically, but if you're thinking about a career in engineering, this is what we do. And you take them to an office and you show them around and you push more into that, like get the community involved and let these engineering firms and let these hospitals and whatever.
Well, I think that's what you were supposed to do. I couldn't do it my senior year because I was making up credits, but there were some people that were leaving, that last period, and they were going to a job or a business.
Right, but I'm thinking freshman, sophomore years when that needs to really start. Because it may be one of those you go and you do one of these things where you check out what a company does and be like, oh, that's what I want to do. Now, I'm not saying you need to have everything figured out at, 15?
So I was about to say, yeah.
But, at least some direction and then change it, Figure out a system that's like, okay. Because, that was my thing at UT. Is like, I was like, I'm going to be a music major. I'm not going to be a performance. I think I'm going to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. I'm not good enough at this. Like, I realized that I got slapped in the face by it in the process. Like, I can't do this. I don't have the dedication, which is my fault. Talent, which is not my fault.
Just
I
kidding.
don't have those two things to pursue this. Like, because you can make up for lack of talent with dedication.
Right.
And you make up with lack of dedication with talent, but you can't have neither and get to the other side. And I was like, yeah, I need to get out of here. And so I went to school. Like, I pushed over to school business because that was, and I was a dork anyway. Like when I was in the rock band with Will and with William Wright and in the Sinru thing, I was the one trying to figure. Like I was the one making accounting books, trying to keep up with. Oh, we played this show. We made $75. Spent $84 in gas. Spent this for a hotel for the night. The show was a net loss of whatever. Like I was doing that without anything.
Right.
And like it dawned on me in the process, maybe I should go to school of business and actually understand what these things mean and what these numbers do and how to properly account these numbers to make sense in a useful way. And so that's where the transition came for me. And then I got out of school and made the mistake of sticking around the restaurants a little longer than I should have. I mean, again, that was on me. I had a job that was in the field, but it wasn't. It was a labor job. It wasn't and I think that was part of why I got fired from that job, because I was just like, I don't want to do labor. I went to college. And, then fucked around and got fired. And again, my fault. I should have stuck to, if it's going to go like that, I should say this isn't for me and quit and at least talk to him about it. But I don't think at the time I understood that in my head.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I've got this job. It's going to be great. Get up and go and fumble around a fucking warehouse all day moving boxes and tires and light poles. Do you know about that? I got a job with Old Dominion.
I was thinking it was Hackney.
No, I applied for Hackney at some point, but it's Old Dominion Freight Lines. They have they're right off of right after the split in '81. It was their cross dock. So it's not a warehouse per se. It's just a cross dock. And so all those little Old Dominion and their piggyback trucks, they're the 2 trailers trucks, and they would just come in and we'd have this. You'd have a list, and it'd be like, pull this item off of this trailer and take it over to that trailer. Because you'd have a trailer that would come from, Vegas, and it would come all the way through and get dumped there. And then, so there's a company, I can't remember the name of the company was, but I think it was Vegas, that did light poles. That's what they made. Prefab light poles. And so, like, we had a trailer full of light poles, and it would come into that dock, and then we put 17 of those poles on this truck, 12 on this truck, 13 on that truck, 15 on this truck. And then that truck would go to Johnson City. That truck would go to New Jersey. That truck would go to wherever. And we just have all these different trucks. It was just that.
Right.
And it's like, physically I could do the job theoretically. Like it wasn't an issue physicality-wise, but it's like I'm just moving stuff as I'm told. This isn't really, like, I don't feel like this is a bachelor's degree level job here. Now, it was one of those companies that, like, you start at the bottom with us and you're going to work your way up. Yeah. Maybe. I could maybe be some senior VP at this point, but I didn't give him the time. My fault.
I mean, a lot of companies want you to do that just to see. They want you coming in not really knowing what the job is you're supposed to be doing to then oversee. They want to have you come in like, okay, you're going to run our dock. You're like, okay, well, what do the people on the dock do?
Right. What you should
want to do. They're like, okay, well, we'll have you cross-train with them for a week.
Yeah.
That's a way for you to build up rapport with people
Sure.
and actually earn your stripes and get a little respect.
Sure. I just, like, I don't know. And again, this one's on me. I'm the fuck up in this story, for sure. But I don't remember at least feeling like that this was a planned growth thing. That this is hey, you got a logistics degree? We do logistics. It's in our title. Okay, I'll work for you. And then I think it was just I was being an idiot. Both ways. Like I was being an idiot on thinking what the job was.
There's a job that I can use my degree on.
Yeah, because I went in there talking about changing their whole system up and shit. I was like, can I take notes and give you some things that I think we might could do better? And it's like, you've been here for fucking 2 weeks. You've been out of school for whatever. Which I'll bet you some of the stuff that I told him was right.
But it's not something you say in the interview process.
Well, no, I said it after they hired me, and he was like, "Yeah, man, cool, whatever." And I went through its whole thing, and I was like, "Yeah, never mind." But yeah, that's my history with Old Dominion. Anyway, we started talking about the Queen and we got sidetracked. I wanted to, like, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure out how I feel about it. Like, a person's dead. Bummer. I'm not happy anybody's dead.
Yeah.
But I also don't fucking care, like, why it's a big deal. It doesn't change anything at all.
And yet you're letting it affect you.
I guess. Well, because you can't. I mean, I don't know. You can't get on social media. You can't get on. Like, I can't listen to any of my normal news shows or anything that I like to listen to, and they don't without them talking about it.
Well, I didn't realize until it was mentioned, but she was essentially the queen for 70 years.
It was a long time. Yeah, she's the longest in the history of the nation.
That's what they were saying. Like, most people, like, that's the only, like, royal they've ever known.
Yeah, I mean, for us, for sure.
Right.
We'll probably get another one in like 5 years. I think Charles has got a ton left in him.
Very possible. And see the video. Apparently, he had a little hissy fit or something. He was like signing a bunch of paperwork, and like some pen was leaking, and he got like mad at, I guess, like the royal pen hander over person or something.
Why do you give me shitty pens? Why did you give me shitty pens? I don't know. I don't do a good British accent. Oi. I don't. I mean, it's.
That's where Camilla's called queen consort or something like that. She's not the queen.
Well, it's like was it Andrew, Queen, the former queen's husband?
Philip.
He was.
Philip.
Yeah, he was like King Regent or something like that.
Or
Prince Regent. I can't remember. Like, he had a title, but it had a suffix to it because he wasn't the king.
Right.
So it's the King Regent.
Makes sense. He's not the bloodline king.
Yeah.
The blood king.
So I saw a funny, like, making fun of wokeism meme. It's like, this wokeism's going too far. The queen's now a dude.
I don't get it.
The queen.
Yeah.
Like, so they're saying that Charles is the queen.
Oh.
The queen's now a dude. This woke thing's going too far.
Okay.
All right, these are the jokes, people. Thanks for hanging out for that one.
Nice. That was a good one.
So, I don't know. Like I said, I don't really care. I'm curious because I think you got a valid point as far as, like, I think there was a belovedness to her, especially as she aged. There was a beloved.
Yeah. As she got older, a lot of people saw her as like their grandmother.
Right.
Everyone was reminded of their
right. And this biggery old bitch of a Charles III might ruin the loving grandmother image because he does not seem like the caring grandfather type.
Could be. But they play a pretty kind of behind the scenes role. I saw an interesting
wave in the crowd in certain events, and
that one British guy that has like 15 different YouTube channels did one thing that was talking about all the official like royal powers, and they have a lot more, but Elizabeth was never one to really use it.
I would like to see one of these. I didn't know they had any.
Most of them are ceremonial, but I think they technically like have some administrative powers. But I think they decided, years ago that I guess they kind of saw the demise, and a lot of people didn't want to have kings and queens kind of ruling over, especially given their history going back hundreds of years.
Right.
And they're like, okay, like we have power, we're not going to use it. Like we're a parliamentary system now, like that's who does all the lawmaking.
Right. We respect the machine that has replaced us. And as long as they let us continue to exist as royalty and just hang out and have all the nice things. I think it's weird, like everybody making a big hissy fit about, well, now that the Queen's dead, they should send their shit back to India. Like some of the crown jewels, I guess, are Indian.
Yeah, I think the main crown jewel, I think it was mined in India.
I don't know. But like this is the opportunity to right wrongs and give everybody their shit back, which
many countries have been slowly doing that.
Yeah.
I think there's a thing recently, I want to say there's some in New York that got taken from one of our major museums and returned back, but I think most of those were found to be illegally
sold
illegally originally taken. Yeah,
I mean,
but some of them were taken out of people's private collections.
It's an interesting. I think that is an interesting kind of dynamic at play. Like, and I get it on both sides. Like, I get the argument of, I mean, it's a museum. This is a place where we share the cultures of the world and let people learn more about things that they don't know.
Right.
So like, we've got some, what's the McClung Museum on campus? Mm-hmm. Like, we've got some Egyptian stuff there that's like some legit from Egypt ancient stuff. And it's like, I would never be able to come in contact in my normal day-to-day life with that part of human history otherwise.
Right.
But at the same time, I also get the argument. It's like, well, I am Egyptian and I'm from Egypt, and I would like my things back. You took those from us, and you are profiting from them. Now, McClung's a little different because it's the university museum and it's free and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, like,
some of the things are on loan and do kind of consistently rotate around from countries. But yeah, some of them have been on display in museums for hundreds of years, or whatever.
If I don't know, if India had like one of the stones from Stonehenge at some museum there, you think England would be like, hey, it's ours. Can we have it back, please? We can put it back where it belongs.
I think for a while Greece has been trying to get back from Great Britain because they've had chunks of the Parthenon. Like kind of like the main front, I guess, where there's all the little statues on the very front. You know, of course, not the pillars themselves, but all the figures that are kind of there at the top.
I did not know that.
I think they've had pieces of it for a while. Yeah. Oh, you can just go to Nashville and see it here.
I don't know. It's again, like I said, I kind of get it on both sides. Like I think there is national heritage that you deserve to have because it's your nation's history. But at the same time, it's like, well, how are the rest of us going to get a chance to get it up close and personal? Because you know, especially as Americans, we don't have the history. Like we just don't. As a nation, you know, we're 200 and almost 50 years old. How long has England more or less been a nation as we know it since like 900? Something like that.
Something like that, maybe.
So 1,300 years of history. Like I saw a thing where, because we were talking about a couple weeks ago when we were talking about house shopping. Like, it's a recent addition to like realty laws that I think it's only if it's a murder, it has to be disclosed in the house. It's either a murder in the house or somebody died in the house. Where, like, if you're in England, it's like, well, yeah, unless it's a brand new house. Yeah.
So somebody probably died in here at some point.
This house is 300 years old. Right. Plenty of people have died in here. What's the big deal?
I think it's also something on that as a landlord, you do not have to disclose if you're renting out a property if someone got murdered there.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Quote me on it, but I think...
there's a show, it's a BBC show. It's called Time Team. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's an archaeology show. And like it feels like, and I know it's a little bit more complicated, but like it feels like they just go into a field somewhere randomly in England and start digging around, and they'll find Roman stuff and they'll find whatever. Like it's more structured than that. Like, but like I mean, there's like this little village in some random county in England, like 2 hours out of London. They're trying to find it started off with like a map. There was a Roman map of England or whatever, and there was this thing on the map, and it said whatever it was. And they're trying to find the foundations to this, you know, temple to Zeus or whatever that the Romans said they put there, but they don't know where it is.
Right.
And so they're digging around in people's backyards, or gardens, rather. But they're just digging in people's gardens, and they're finding, you know, Roman shit, like all the time. Like they do the show all the time, like, and it's pretty crazy, like how much stuff they find.
Yeah, I saw one where they were digging up, I think they ended up finding, they thought they were looking for Roman stuff, they ended up finding older, I guess, Saxon, stuff, but it was basically like a little cart that had a wooden wheel and everything. They started unearthing it, and for some reason they started having to cover back up, because I think of it, the air being exposed to it for more than like a day, like the wood started rotting.
Yeah.
They still had, you know, the full like wheel and I guess like the platform itself.
That's why the bog, that's why they find so much stuff in the bogs or whatever,
right?
Because it sinks down in the mud and there's no air.
Yeah, but I think it's common in a lot of European countries that before you have any kind of like major dig, they'll have like archaeologists come in there just to make sure that like, hey, before you.
Right. And I believe like excavating, like companies that do like, you know, groundwork and excavation set up for a build or whatever, like they have obligations by law that
if you stumble across something, you have to stop right there.
And I think in certain places and certain, because that's one of the things they talk about on the show every once in a while. I was like, they're like, I think it was, they were building an exit ramp or something for the M5, and like, you know, in the U.S. way where we joke about, there's always the, you know, when T-Dot's doing work, there's the one guy doing work and the five guys standing around. Well, in England or whatever, one of those guys is a historian, And his job is to watch the dig, and if they find something, to go out there and see if it's something that he has to stop the dig for.
Right.
And then they stop the dig, and they have to do a full archaeological thing. That's got to be tough. It's got to be tough on the infrastructure and trying to do projects for a community when you can't, when you get stopped and you have to go through and figure out what it is. I mean, how they got, I mean, you know, there's houses that are built on Roman foundations that are still there.
Yeah.
And there's people that, like, their cellar is a Roman cellar, and that's just normal. It's a 2,000-year-old thing that's part of their home.
Let's see, I read one interesting. It was in Mexico, where they found, it was like they've ever seen the pictures. They've got these giant underground caves, but if you looked at them from over top, they just look like these small little ponds, basically. Mm-hmm. But if you dive down into them, there's an extensive cave structure. I guess it's all along their eastern coast, but it's where they're wanting to build a big train that would connect Cancun and some other resorts. But I guess it goes over these kind of like marshy areas where they also have all these underground caves that have been flooded from like the last ice age. But they've actually found, I guess, through diving, some actual like bodies like down on the floor. They want to explore them. And the president, I think, is one of the main people. It's like, no, we got to get this train built. And they're like, whoa, we need to slow down and actually, look at this.
Figure out what this is.
But they said, I guess if they build that train or start doing construction, that could then just ruin that whole archaeological site.
Yeah.
Essentially just start knocking down sediment.
Well, it's like Mexico City or whatever. They were building the subway, and they found, like, as they were digging for this subway, it was like the main downtown station or something like that. They found some, I guess, Aztec. Is that right? Mexico City?
Possibly.
It's like some Aztec, like, temple. And so they went through the whole excavation process or whatever, and then they ended up doing, like, the wall of the subway station is glass. And then behind the glass is this temple wall that's got, ancient paintings and stuff on it.
That's pretty cool.
And so it's part of the station. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. So you can do it both ways. Like, you now have a subway with a station that is also a tourist attraction.
That everybody gets to see.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I think that's one of the advantages of America. We don't, our indigenous people did not have extensive projects that have that kind of remains to have to worry about as much. Not saying they don't.
Or as many.
Right.
We had a lot of mounds.
Right. But we don't have, those, the
Machu Picchu,
right,
and things like
pyramids and stuff like that in Mexico. And was it the Toltec, the pre-Aztec civilization that was apparently massive and built giant things, and it died off, and then the Aztecs rose up, and they don't, for at least archaeologically, they don't think there's any straight through. Like, it was literally a giant civilization that grew up, built giant temples and stuff. For whatever reason, that civilization died off, people went off, survivors scattered throughout Mexico or whatever, and then the Aztec came up, like 1,000 years later.
Not as familiar, because I know there's the Maya, which I don't know if they were more Central America. I think the Mayans.
Well, it's the Incas, Chile, Argentina, or whatever, right?
Yeah, South America.
Yeah. I don't remember either. It's not that there's not enough fictional history that uses it. Like, we have so many good histories of Rome. Like, we have the Gladiator movies and stuff like that give us a fictionalized version of that history, so we know so much about it.
Yeah.
We just don't have that with Western Hemisphere history, which that could be there. I mean, because essentially, like Game of Thrones right now, even though it's a fictional universe, it's very much like Middle Ages. Mm-hmm. Like it's all Middle Ages except with dragons and whatever, but it's that feudal system and succession of the throne and all that kind of shit. That's the whole storyline, but it's all basically like ancient Europe,
principalities,
semi-ancient Europe or whatever. We just need the new Predator movie. Apparently, is ancient Middle American.
Movie or a miniseries?
I think it's a movie.
Is it?
Ooh, new Star Wars series starts tomorrow.
Ooh,
I'm excited about this one. Andor. It's called Andor. It's based off of. It's the. God, I as much as I love it, I don't know his name. I talk all the time. I think my favorite
Obi-Wan?
My favorite Star Wars movie is holy fuck, brain work.
I thought the new show kind of focused a little bit more about Obi-Wan, or was there a new TV show about Obi-Wan?
Rogue One was my favorite in the series. Obi-Wan was a show, and it's already run its course.
Okay, never mind.
It was okay. But Cassian Andor is one of the main characters in Rogue One, and so this Andor series is his backstory, how he got to where we meet him in Rogue One. And he's fantastic. He's good. He's a good character. But like I said, the Rogue One movie was my favorite movie of the movies that they've done. So I'm excited about it personally.
Yeah.
I'm not too big on the new Game of Thrones series. It's not really doing it for me. I'm just going to continue watching it.
I think I've seen like most of one of the sequels as far as the movies.
I have seen all of them many a time. I have a hard time watching them anymore. I've seen them so many times. And the kids drive me nuts because I keep trying to get them to watch it with me because I want to run my experiment. I want to view it. I want to see their interpretation of it if we view it in order, in storyline order,
right?
Not in release order. Because I think 1, 2, and 3 won't be as bad if you don't know 4, 5, and 6. But everybody, our generation, everybody knew 4, 5, 6, and then went back to 1, 2, 3. And I think knowing the ending made it a little hard to watch. I mean, I think even though they haven't seen really any of the movies in totality, I think they know who Anakin Skywalker is. So I think they'll still know that is Darth Vader developing in front of them.
Yeah.
But I think we could get close. I'd be curious. So yeah. Anyway, this Andor series, I'm super jacked up and excited about. I don't know what else is going on. What am I just? We went through the Queen. We went through our 4 ballot items. Talked about my terrible work history and how bad of an employee I am.
What else is going on in the world?
I know I had stuff that I want to talk about. Oh, going back to last week, that Chicago.
It's not Chicago. It's Illinois.
The state of Illinois, right?
Yeah. Apparently, they passed it last year, and I think they've still been kind of amending it, but it still doesn't go into effect until January 1st.
Right.
Coming up.
Right. Which the cops and the prison guard unions hate it. The attorney generals hate it.
Some do. I mean, depends on what part. Because apparently it was a part of like a whole big package plan or whatever.
Right. I mean, I think anything starting the process of criminal justice reform is not a bad thing.
Right.
But I think Chicago is a terrible. I think Chicago being early. Well, I bet you there's others that have already been doing it for a while that we just don't know about because we don't hear about it. We just hear about Chicago crime all the time.
Well, I think there's been a big push in the past, at least 5 or 10 years for bail reform.
Right.
Or I think that one story that I'd said had some people talking about it, that it was more in trying to keep, somebody that does something really bad, but they happen to have a shit ton of money, they can get out on bail versus someone that got busted for shoplifting but can't pay the $500 bail. They sit in there for 22 days waiting to
right.
go
And
to trial.
if I was a journalist, I would work this story and figure it out because I know the stat. I don't know how accurate the stat is as of today, but there was a period of time when the Knox County Detention Center, that more than half of the inmates were awaiting trial.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine. I don't know how many total people are in there, but I can't imagine that there are more than half of the total possibility of a population that would be in the category of we have to set bail for you at a ridiculous number because we have to make sure you don't disappear.
Right.
I would assume that most of them just can't afford bail, period, or a bond or anything, period. doesn't matter. It could have been $20 and they couldn't afford it, And so they're sitting there. Their life's already ruined, and it's not even trial time yet.
Right.
And for any range of things, shoplifting or whatever, multiple DUI offenses, which is whatever. It's not okay.
It's a complicated system,
but
I mean, some defense attorneys and attorneys in general did have concerns with this new system. They said it does set that bar a little bit higher, I guess, for them making the case that the state needs to hold this person pending trial.
Good. Should be a high bar. I mean, obviously it's not very, at least Knox County-wise, we're assuming it's not a very high bar as is. I don't know what the Illinois standards are, but I would assume that there's a lot of people in there that it's not even a possibility.
I mean, most of them, at this point, they pretty much have it set a range for, this offense has a range of a fine of this to this, or a recommended incarceration time of this to this if you're found guilty.
Right. And so the bail, but I don't know that the bail is the same way, because it's not the same judges, per se. And it's not.
I think even bail has its limits. For this, the average bail is this. I don't think
it's a good question.
I don't think they look at the person and go, "Oh shit, he's got an Armani suit on." Like bail $10 million.
No, I mean I know the judges are presented with their income and their at least a snapshot of their finances before they set bail.
But I think that's more for determining if they get court-appointed attorney.
I mean, I don't know. I don't think those are the same hearings, but I'm pretty sure when you go to enter your plea and set bail, that the parties are aware of the general financials. I believe that is an obligation. It may not be a perfect picture.
I think when you go in for arraignment, which I think is your first, your first time in front of the judge, is also when they'll say, you can represent yourself. I think they'll actually go ahead and take a plea if you're found guilty.
Right. How do you plead not guilty? Right. Okay, well, your bail is set at $100,000.
Right.
Cash or bond, check.
But I think that's also where you go ahead and say, I would like a court-appointed attorney. And I think that's what they'll ask, all right, where are you working? How much do you get paid? Or unless they already have that information.
Good questions. Good questions. We need to get a judge. I'll call Dino.
For the court things I've seen, it's like that.
I just feel like I feel like that
because they've got to get that ball rolling as far as appointing a.
Right, I get that part. I agree with you on that part. If the person is eligible for a court appointed, they need to get that set up so they can get them in there and do all that. Start to get to work with the client. Blah blah blah. I agree with that part.
Right.
But I just feel like I've been told or heard or read somewhere that the judges are aware of generally aware of your finances when they set bail. It's not like it's not supposed to be okay. So you're charged with murder. The crime doesn't set the bail number by itself. Now it's a murder charge, so the range may be higher for its starting point, but the bail is set depending on you, the defendant, and your financial go-throughs. Because if I was charged with murder and they set it at $100,000 bail, and Randy Boyd was charged with murder and they set $100,000 bail, it's a completely different drop on either one of us. You looking it up?
Trying to.
Okay.
So I want to hit like space and always end up hitting a damn period, so I end up putting like periods between all my
all my
words.
A lot too. Yeah, I do that on a regular keyboard. How bad is that?
That's bad.
I was trying to look up the hypal thing earlier, and I kept hitting period instead of space.
I don't know what NOLA is.
New Orleans, Louisiana?
It's just NOLA.com. What is NOLA.com?
Oh, I don't know. NewOrleansLouisiana.com?
Company info. Never mind. Let's see here.
Got into a Facebook thingy.
Again?
Not really. I just commented on something because, what's his name? Mr. Phil Williams, the Nashville journalist, he broke the story with the Hillsdale thing, like that video of the Hillsdale College guy and Governor Lee talking or whatever was leaked to him, and he ran that story. Apparently, he's, Jesse and Scott were talking on that show about how he is a well-respected investigative journalist, one of the few good investigative journalists in politics in the state of Tennessee left, or something like that. Did you find it yet? I don't want to move on topics until...
Yeah, just kind of glances at most of them. Their guidelines for how much an individual's bail should be based upon their offense.
Okay.
For example, if the maximum prison term for their offense is 5 years, then the individual's bail should be $30,000. But I mean, you're right. They do have discretion to go above or below it. I don't think it's solely based upon how much the person makes. I think that's where the prosecutors would then argue, like, hey, this person has a lot of disposable income, and we want to seize their passports to make sure they don't get on their private jet and fly out.
If they're a flight risk,
right?
If the prosecution was already a flight risk, they can afford to flee. But I don't know. Again, but that to me is why the bail system as we know it is a problem. Not because they set bail for or whatever. It's just it defeats the purpose. The purpose was supposed to be it was a fine if you didn't come to court when you were asked to.
Right.
Not it's a fine for you being accused of a crime until your court date.
Right.
And so it's supposed to be, hey, court date's here, better be there. If not, you owe me $20,000.
Right.
Instead, it's hey, your court date's here, you owe me $20,000 if you want to not be in jail until your court date. And that's not how. I mean, it's just it's immoral to me. Because there's a person who could be accused of a crime who is innocent, who is now spending time in jail because they can't afford some random fucking arbitrary number that has nothing to do with what they make or what they do or whether they did the thing or not or whether they have intent to run away. Doesn't matter. It's just not that to me. That's goes back to the innocent until proven guilty. So why is an innocent person sitting in jail or potentially innocent person sitting in jail because they haven't been proven guilty yet? If they're proven guilty, then hurry up and prove them guilty and throw them in jail. That's my stance on it.
It's not as simple as you've got 2 days to prove me guilty or not, or release me.
I don't.
Why can't they go that fast?
I mean, if you're going to bring charges and arrest somebody, I think you should have a case. You should already have the case set. And if there's any delays, it should be the defense's side to try to find the holes in the case, not the prosecution side. If I'm going to put a warrant out for your arrest because I think you murdered somebody, just putting the warrant out, I'm supposed to have a pretty reasonable...
All right, and you're not going to get a judge to sign off on a warrant for arrest without probable cause.
Right. So if I already have the probable cause for arresting you,
right, that
should mean I have a case already.
Probable cause, and
I have the major points of the means, motive, opportunity things. I should have those already figured out and proof of those things before I arrest you for a thing. Because I think that's part of the problem is that it gives the police leeway in their arresting process because they can arrest somebody that they think did it but haven't gone through the process of proving it yet because we can now get them arrested, get them detained, get them held with an expensive bail and they're going to stay in jail. And then we can figure out if they did it or not. And then it gets a weird motivation is that we have to make sure that we figure out that they did it or we have a false arrest charge and all that kind of bullshit. We have to make sure that this person that we arrested for the crime was the one that actually committed the crime because they've already spent 20 days in jail waiting trial. We better make this stick instead of having this airtight case before the arrest.
I can't think of too many situations where you have an airtight case before you've even arrested someone.
Pretty close to airtight case. Why not? Why? Like, why wouldn't you?
How would you?
Okay, so if one of the issues with bail and remand is that you're a flight risk, well, unless I think you're a flight risk before I arrest you, and that's why I arrest you now. Why am I not taking that time while you're moving around free, building the case? I have the case. I arrest you, go to court, get you found guilty, you go to jail. Instead, it's I think you did this. I arrest you. I build the case. We go to court. You may or may not go to jail. You should have the case built before you arrest somebody. Doesn't make sense. You shouldn't be, like, suspicion of crimes, and getting arrested for suspicion of a crime is ridiculous. Especially if this bail system keeps people in because they can't afford to get out. It shouldn't be suspected of a crime. It should be charged with a crime before you arrest them. We are charging you with this crime. That's why we're arresting you. Does that difference make sense?
Kinda.
Little blue hatchback was involved in this hit and run accident that killed a baby. Okay. That's the only evidence they have at play. So they go arrest you because you drive a little blue hatchback. And now you're in jail and you can't afford bail.
Okay.
And all they have on you is that you drive a car that matches the description.
Right.
Wouldn't you think maybe the investigation process, they would say, well, this individual who owns a little blue car was at work. We have time clocks and we have video from the owner that says that they were at work at the time. We probably shouldn't arrest this one. Wouldn't you think that would be part of the process before you arrest them? Not just anybody with a little blue car that may or may not have been in the area at the time? Wouldn't that be part of building the case before you arrest somebody?
I mean, I think in your scenario that they wouldn't actually arrest someone solely on flimsy evidence like that.
I mean, so what's the so why are you going to go through the step of making sure that this little blue car and its owner had the means, I guess opportunity would be this one, opportunity to commit this crime, because this particular little blue car was in a parking lot because the owner was at work at the time. So that's checking one off the list of your investigation process. Okay, well, this little blue car with this owner, we don't know where he was. So that means the opportunity is potentially there. We have some proof that he was nearby there because he put gas in his car at a gas station 2 blocks away from the incident, 15 minutes before the incident went down. So that we have that one more checklist to it. Do you arrest a guy just because you know the guy was in the car that's similar to it and in the area at the time?
I would think that most cops would not base solely upon that evidence right there.
That's what I'm saying. So what you're doing is you're building the case.
Right.
You're trying to find the individual that had all the parts and pieces to actually be this one before you arrest them. So you're already building the case. So build a case that you actually think, that you truly think this is the person, so that when you go to trial, you're confident in your in the convictability because this person was the person before you arrest them. Instead of we have a few parts and pieces of this thing, it makes sense that it might have been this guy. Let's arrest him, and then we'll finish doing the investigation in that gap between this arrest and trial. I'm saying flush out the case before you arrest and make sure this is the person that you really think did it before the arrest. And I think that's one of the problems with the bail system, is it gives the officers a little more leeway to arrest a little bit more flippantly because they have time to build the case. And then it gives them that poor incentive of, well, we arrested him, now we better build the case to win, instead of already having built the case to win before the arrest.
Yeah. What I've seen of watching court cases, I mean, it's just not the way the judicial system works. I understand that's what you're pushing back on, is you don't think it should work that way. But I think the investigative process just doesn't work the way that you think it should work. Okay.
Maybe. I mean, obviously. I mean, I think it's true that it doesn't work. I think it does more closely resemble your version of it than mine. But again, I don't know.
So everyone should be free until
proven guilty. Yes, that is the number one of the big adages of being American. Innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And innocent people shouldn't be in jail. So if the adage is innocent until proven guilty, then you shouldn't be in jail until you are proven guilty. Now, I will carve out some exceptions to that.
Oh, now there's exceptions.
I said that last week when we were talking about this too.
How did you? What did we talk about it last week?
When we were talking about the Chicago thing, and Max was calling it the Purge City or whatever.
That was the other thing I read. Yeah, that there were some people who were like, "Oh, it's going to turn into the Purge."
Like I think there are cases that could. I don't think bail. I think bail need not exist. I think it's remand or no, and I think there should be a high bar for remand. And remand is flight risk or immediate danger to the community or themselves. Like, we think you did this. We've got a good bit of evidence on it. We need to do a little bit more looking into it, but we're pretty confident it's you, and we're pretty confident that if you're not with us, you're going to go kill somebody else. So you're staying with us until we finish this thing.
Why?
Huh?
They're innocent. Have you proven that person guilty?
That's my exception. I can't break down the details of it, but that'd be my exception. But again, like I said, it'd have to be a high damn bar for you to say we're pretty sure you're going to do it again.
So in what cases is it okay to detain someone and keep them from not being free until they are found guilty?
Again, if the prosecution and or
you were just saying innocent until proven guilty.
If the prosecution and the police can prove that person is a risk of flight to themselves or others in the time it's going to take to get to trial, then I think remand is appropriate. But again, they'd have to prove that. They can't just be like, "Oh, well, we think he might." It's like, well, no. Here's the evidence we have for that he did the crime that he committed, and here's evidence that we think he's going to do it again.
Right.
So put him in a box. Let's get trial here as soon as we can, so that we then can keep him in a box long term.
Why don't they already have that case just set before they even arrested him?
Because they do theoretically, but it takes a period of time between that arrest and the actual court being available for the trial.
True.
You got to pull in jurors and all that kind of shit. But hell, I mean, get that court date set really early for jury selection and shit like that. You're obligated to show up as the defendant. If you don't show up for that date, then you're automatically remanded. You're automatically, you're not here for your first hearing, bench warrant. Now you're remanded when we pick you up.
That's generally how most.
I'm just saying, like,
of course, the cases that I've seen, they've done that. They're like,
don't give them.
They're like, "Hey, we've got you in it because I put a bench warrant out." And
unless they
you're now be remanded. Like, can I just get out on bail again? It's like, no, we tried that last time.
Right. If they walk out the door from their arraignment, and your court date's close enough, don't give them time. Unless they're walking out the door and then running to Canada. Don't give them time to run. Most people, there's some people I know personally that have their go bag. Shit gets weird. Grab that bag and go. But most people aren't prepared to just disappear right now.
Right.
It'll take them a little bit of time. So make your court date closer, as close as you can, so they have as little time to get their shit together to get out of town. If there's even a remote concern.
Right. Which still even isn't always possible.
Right.
So, you have people getting arrested and going to court every day.
So anyway, Philip Williams out of Nashville with his investigative journalism thing, he put on his Twitter page, breaking news, pro-charter group's internal poll reveals public schools are actually more popular than the politicians who want to change them. It also shows strongly that Tennesseans strongly disagree with having the state impose charter schools on local districts. Okay, so I'm going to assume that he's speaking factually. Right, and so I said, so if charter schools get funding from the state according to enrollment, won't these charter schools just fail and leave? Tennesseans don't like them. They're not popular with parents. If they're not popular with parents, they shouldn't. It would be unlikely that they get strong enrollment. If they don't get strong enrollment, they don't get the funding they need to operate. So they'd fail and leave.
They would probably still operate for at least 5 to 10 years before people became dissatisfied with them. So that's, a generation or two of generation of kids that are going through a failing system.
Maybe
a possibly failing system.
But that's not.
Everything I've seen, the charter schools compared to public schools, charter schools don't rank any higher.
Okay, but the just in the statement that he said is that internal poll reveals public schools are actually more popular than the politicians saying.
Right.
right? And Tennesseans disagree with the state.
And more popular than the politicians.
Right. Public schools are the more popular option for parents than the politicians are trying to make you believe that parents want.
No, that's not what that statement is saying.
The pro-charter group's internal poll reveals public schools are actually more popular than the politicians who want to change them. Oh, than the actual individual. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. This is what he is saying.
Okay.
Okay. I just want to make sure you're understanding this before you try to expand upon it.
It doesn't change it.
It does.
It doesn't change what I'm talking about in response to that.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
If charter schools aren't popular, because if public schools are more popular than, I don't know, Glenn Jacobs, right? That's what this is. That's your breakdown of this. Because Glenn Jacobs is a pro-voucher guy, I believe. A pro-voucher, pro-charter school guy.
Okay.
So what this is saying is that public schools are more popular than that person.
Yeah.
So then that means that more people like public schools than that person. So more people would send their kids to public schools than would vote for that person. That person wins here in Knoxville regularly.
Okay.
Whichever version of that person it is. So that means there's more people, a significantly large number of people who prefer public schools to charter schools and voucher school options as parents.
Okay.
So if a charter school comes in, it is not likely to get good enrollment, therefore fail on a monetary basis, close up shop and leave. Is that not a decent assertion from the premise of this statement?
You think that's what he's saying, or that's what you're getting from this?
That is a conclusion that I have made from his statement.
I don't.
The simplified version of his statement is that charter schools aren't as popular with parents as the politicians want us to believe they are. They're not a popular option. People don't prefer them. Although the one that's coming in here, this boys' school that's coming in here to Knoxville, sounds great to me on paper.
Don't know about it.
They're going into like Western Heights or whatever. They're specifically going after lower income neighborhoods. It's an all-boys school. And it's a section that has not particularly great public schools as far as the public school grading system goes and all that kind of shit. It will take weight off of those schools so that those schools can do better for their students. And it'll pull some of that population out. So even though they lose the funding, they'll have more room and stuff like that to work with the students they have. I don't know. Like, I don't understand voucher schools well enough, obviously. Like, I get it. Well, what's confusing to me is that, so state and local have a certain number per student in Knox County. I can't figure out, nobody can quite tell me exactly what that number is. But if you enroll your kids in a voucher or in a charter school, and the charter school accepts your kids, that's one of the things that people complain about them, is that they get to accept. They don't have to accept every student. They get to pick and choose who they keep, or who gets to be their students. That amount of funding from the state and local will go to that school instead of to Knox County schools. Right? And then there's private money that comes in to help these charter schools out.
Where's the private money come from?
The one that's coming here, there's a guy in Chattanooga. There's a couple in Chattanooga that apparently, like, he was like a Wall Street guy or something like that, got dumb rich, retired back to Chattanooga and did a boys and girls school in Chattanooga. And they independently and through other philanthropics down in Chattanooga back fund this school. And so the concern is that these schools are getting more per pupil than a Knox County school kid, because the Knox County portion of the money goes to that school plus the private money on top. But at the same time, Scott and Jesse were talking about it, is that the state allocates. The state won't allocate currently. Apparently, Governor Lee's trying to add to it capital expenditures into school systems, into voucher schools, like they do into school systems, which says to me that there's a secondary funding from the state that helps with capital expenditures when we're building new schools and stuff like that. Because essentially the way Scott and Jesse described it is that the per pupil funding that comes from the state and local into these charter schools is just for instruction, as far as building the building, the maintenance staff, the non-essentials, but basically the infrastructure of a school, the building itself, that kind of stuff comes from private money in charter schools, where it comes from public money in public schools, which I was really confused on. Well, is that public school funding for a building coming out of the per pupil spending, or is there a separate state and local funding that goes into paying for that? I know some of it is separate in the sense that, like, Knox County will buy a piece of land, and then Knox County Schools will build a school on it. And so the county owns the land, the county paid for the land, not Knox County Schools kind of shit. And so that's extra money going into the school system indirectly, which is essentially what the charter schools are doing. That land purchase and building purchase is an outside expenditure from the state funding. So it's really, I don't know. I'm really confused on how they work, obviously. I'm really confused on what the complaint is, because at least as it sits right now, the Knox County Board of Education has to permit a voucher school. So the voucher school has to go to Knox County School Board and say, hey, we want to put this charter school in. Knox County Schools has to say, okay.
Would that do the same for a private school?
Private schools, no. I don't think so. But charter schools, because they get direct funding from the state,
right,
currently. Now, that's one of the things that apparently Governor Lee's trying to do, is take the school boards out and make it a state schools. The Tennessee Department of Education gets to be the one to choose whether or not a charter school can go in. Which, I don't know. Neither one makes sense to me, honestly. I think it's a weird idea that... I mean, I get it when there's funding, there's public funding involved, so it makes sense to me that the public entities get a say on whether public funding whether a thing can exist that's going to take public funding. I get that, but at the same time, it's
like, you need 10 more schools. Here you go.
Well, I mean, it's like at the same time, it's like, well, you know, what would possess Knox County Schools to grant a charter school? Like, why would you do that? When the concern is they're going to take funding from you.
If they were obviously overcrowded.
I mean, I think that would be the... Yeah, I mean...
Or they're projected to be overcrowded in
right. That would be the reason. That would be the reasonable, you know,
right,
logical answer. But I don't know. I mean, you know, again, if the complaint is they're taking money, but they're taking money from us, it's like, well, yeah, we could get, you know, we could get 700 kids out of 4 schools that's around that charter school, and that would give us more room to breathe. But we also lose teachers, administrators for all those schools because we don't have the population to obligate it. So even though we have more room, we lose teachers,
right,
and we lose admins, and we lose funding. So again, what would be I don't understand why how a charter school could even exist. Why would a county let a charter school in? Although we already have one, Emerald Youth Academy, or whatever, which is 6 through 12.
I think Memphis has had some.
Memphis has a bunch.
Yeah.
I think Jesse said there's like 115 charter schools in the state of Tennessee. Like 80-something of them are in Nashville and Memphis. There's like 3 in Chattanooga. We have 1 here. This will be 2 if this one gets cleared. And there's like 1 in Bristol. There's a couple that are running around the state. But like 80 or 90 of them are in Nashville and Memphis. Which, again, I don't know. To me, it doesn't sound like a bad thing to have some philanthropic person investing in a school, essentially, to try to help. Now, I guess argument can be made that they're not trying to help. They're trying to launder money through their, you know, they're trying to do tax games and kind of bullshit. But, I mean, it sounds to me like this couple, dude made gajillion dollars. And he really I think, to me, it feels like this couple likes to throw fundraisers. And so they go out and find other philanthropic people. They throw a fundraiser. They collect a bunch of money, and they have to do something with that money. So they made so they had their own money, and they like throwing parties that raise money, like $1,000 plate dinners, kind of bullshit. So they like doing that stuff, but they need to do it philanthropically. They're not just going to do random $1,000 plate dinners. And so they started a couple charter schools, and now they're starting another one.
It's possible.
You know, but again, it doesn't sound like a bad deal to me. I get the complaint that they don't have to accept every student, And so, like, special needs kids who are more expensive will stay in Knox County schools, and we'll have less regular needs kids who get funding pulled from them to go to special needs kids with the way the Knox County schools works. And so for every 50 kids that are regular needs, I don't know how else to say it, for every 50 regular needs kids that come out, that's, you know, $500 a year that comes out of the special needs budget. Because, you know, like Rocky Hill, at least a couple of years ago when I talked to Virginia Bab, state and local is supposed to be like $7,500, $8,000 a kid. Rocky Hill's average is like $5,600. You know, and so my kids gets less spent on them because Knox County reallocates it where they feel like they need it. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just stating the fact. And so that's the complaint. That's one of the concerns with charter schools, is that charter schools won't take special needs kids. And so all those kids that they do take, the percentage that the county was taking from those kids and putting into special needs goes away. Which I get that complaint. But I think the TISA formula is supposed to attack that, because the funding per student will be on the needs of the student regardless. Which may encourage charter schools and private schools to take special needs kids, because they'll get more funding for those kids from the state.
Possibly.
If we do it, well, not private schools unless we do a voucher. But like a charter school could specialize in special needs kids because the new formula gets more money per kid. I don't know. It's just an idea. And again, I can't figure out this TISA formula any better than I could figure out the BEP one to actually say whether that theory is true or not. I do know that the cliff thing is real, though.
The cliff thing?
Yeah, I think the term's like financial cliff or whatever. So the way this new TISA formula thinks, it's gonna be very front heavy from the state, which sets a new floor for spending per pupil. But as time progresses, the state kicks in less, and there's a law in the books that says essentially a school system can't spend less next year than they did this year per student. And so the state part of it starts to dwindle, and so the county will have to make up that difference at least to keep it level. And to do that, it's going to take more out of their budgets. But the assertion, at least, is that the counties are going to have to start raising property tax. They're going to have to raise property tax to cover that difference to keep the schools at the new floor of funding.
I know in the assembly they went on for days and days and hours talking to the Penny Schwinn, the head of Department of Education.
Ooh, Penny Schwinn was here in town last week too.
Was she?
With that? Yeah, she was here with Flotus.
I heard she came. I don't remember what school I saw that she went to.
Jill Baden? I can't remember. I can't remember what school we went to, and then she went to UT and did some more stuff, and then she bounced over to like Boone or something like that in North Carolina and did some more. As Jesse put it, I think very accurately, had nothing to do with us. We were just a good backdrop.
Yeah.
Like, you know, she was here praising the Grow Your Own program for teachers, where it's basically graduate from high school, go to a local university, and then come back and teach at the school you graduated from. Or one of the schools you went to as a kid. Stay in the district that you graduated high school from.
Yeah.
And apparently there's some benefits to that. As the teacher, you get assistance with funding or whatever class group. All right, so this cuts in a weird spot, and so I just did it anyway because we forgot to have a conversation about something that I wanted to make sure I talked about, and I forgot about it. And then after we closed the show, I said, "Oh shit, I forgot to talk about that thing." So, apologies for the weird cut in and cut out, because you know I'm too lazy to edit most of the time. But apparently this weekend, let me look it up while we're chatting about it. Sam's TV is already turned off, but that's okay. Apparently this weekend, the Ku Klux Klan, or KKK for short, is holding a rally right up the road from Knoxville. I'm trying to find it. Let's see here. Constance. I've seen it a couple of different places, but Constance was the most recent one, and now I can't fucking find it. So there it is. All right. This is in Tazewell, Tennessee, on the 24th of September. So, yeah, this weekend. There is a Klan rally. And people are... Actually, you know what? I said that this is real, and I don't know that this is real. Either way, I'm pretty sure there's something to this, at least enough that if it's a hoax, it's a hoax with intent, because everybody talking about it is saying how Governor Lee is cool with the KKK. So even if it is a hoax, it's a hoax with intent to have political effect. Or it's real, and it's having political effect. But my take on it, and I didn't comment on, but I kind of want to comment on, it's like, I'm not saying we should be excited about this happening or anything, but if you were to hold a Black Lives Matter rally, not that they're equatable organizations, but if you want to hold a rally, you want your free speech for your thing, right? You want your right to assemble for your thing, right? So why, like, because they're the reason I think it's real is because attached with it, and everybody that I've seen share it, is a list of whatever the county Tazewell is, or the city, like the alderman or whatever of the city of Tazewell. Like, there's a list of their phone numbers and email addresses, their official county or city, email addresses for the county commissioners and or whatever, saying, call them, tell them they can't let this happen and they shouldn't let this be okay.
All right.
And so that's why I take the take I take, is that I think it would be, as much as I'm not cool with it, I don't want it to exist. To go through an active process to shut this one down means you're okay with shutting down First Amendment assemblies of people on private land or in private, even in public spaces. Because like this is the ones like it's got the number for the Tazewell mayor, the police chief. Attached to it is more numbers of other people in the municipality that could theoretically have something to do with making sure they lose their permit to run their rally, whether they have one or not. I don't know what the details are on that side. But that's why I assume it's real. But again, my take is, yes, it sucks. Yes, they're bad people.
I mean, anybody could copy and paste official numbers on there to make it look legit.
Yeah, you're right. And again, and I'll for the record, I will acknowledge that it could be a hoax with the intent to fuck up and make this a Governor Lee problem. And again, I got this from Constance, who was theoretically running against him.
I'd say the joke wouldn't be able to go very far, because eventually, enough people would call, maybe to the point to where Tazewell would put out some kind of like public statement. They're like, "Hey, this is not going on here. Please stop calling."
Yeah,
I don't know where y'all heard this from, but all we're having is a state fair this weekend and a cherry pie eating contest.
Doing a thing.
Yeah, but y'all come out for it now.
All right, so the Claiborne Economic Partnership said, somebody messaged them on Facebook, said, please do not allow the Klan event in Tazewell. We are not part of any of that. We are the chamber which helps businesses in the community. We have zero to do with anything political. We are a non-governmental agency and unfortunately do not have the ability to stop anything like that. Sounds a little bit confirmational to me, but
kind of, yeah.
That could be fake as well. Anywho, I wanted to make sure that got on here before the event or whatever, because apparently it's this weekend. I just think, again, I am not pro-Klan. I don't like the fact that they exist and don't necessarily want them to exist, and people like whatever. But at the same time, as far as we can tell, at least, they went through the process to put their event on that they want to put on. I think it's inappropriate to try to stop them. I would go watch. I think that'd be the way. If you have a problem with it, you need to go watch. You go see who it is. I mean, if they don't all have their hoods all the way on.
Sure.
But go hang out in the parking lot, because apparently there's a parking, the way the banner or the flyer reads is you're parking at a place and then they're going to drive you or escort you to the field where the rally's going on.
Huh.
And they advertise a cross burning. It's part of the thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just saying.
Just doing a little march through downtown or something.
And again, and I'm not trying to say that Black Lives Matter and the KKK are the same thing or inverse things or whatever, but a Black Lives Matter rally and they want to put their thing together. This same set of people that's complaining about this one existing would be really mad if a set of people said, hey, no, we don't want that. We don't want that in our community. Don't do that here. Police chief, mayor, stop them from doing that. You wouldn't be okay with other people telling you weren't allowed to get together with your friends and do something. So how do you feel like you have the right to do it to these people? I mean, I guess if you can get away, if you could justify the argument if they're a terrorist group or something like that, or this new domestic terrorism conversation, maybe. And I still think that's a problem.
They have the right to free speech, but it's when it crosses that line of encouraging violence, essentially.
Right.
Is generally what I think
But
they define between a protest versus advocating violence.
If you do not permit them to speak, they don't have the opportunity to advocate for violence, so you can't prove that you can't prove that negative because you didn't let them do it.
Right.
So yeah, sure. If they go in there and say, let's go kill all the black people in this community, and we are going to do that together, then they should all be arrested instantaneously. Like they should be arrested for that.
Right.
Because they are inciting violence.
Exactly.
And anybody that's part of it, if somebody leaves that thing and goes kill somebody and says that they killed that person because the rally told them to, then anybody involved in that rally should have some consequence, legally speaking. But that doesn't mean they can't have their rally. It means that they need to be careful with their rally and maybe not directly advocate violence in their rally, or do, and then deal with the consequences of doing so.
Right.
So anyway, I thought that was I wanted to talk about that, and I forgot about it while we were doing the regular show, so I wanted to jump back in and put that on. So I'll fix that. This will be before the ending. So, what's our Florida Man story of the week? I guess last call.
Sure, there's grants for it. I don't think I've seen one this week.
Man, I can't give assignments out. They just never, I guess, fail.
Was it an assignment last week again?
I told you we were going to make it a regular thing. You are the bait to keep people hanging around to the end of the episode, because you're going to have the great, in case you missed it, story that's going to make everybody want to wait till the end so they can hear the Sam's. Like I'll make you some theme music at some point.
No.
There'll be a new segment. Sam's News of the Weird. Go.
Beyond Meat executive accused of biting man's nose outside a game.
All right. What game?
It was a Razorback game.
Have you seen that Beyond has a jerky?
I have not.
I find faux meat ridiculous in general. Not that I have any issues with people that decide they don't want to eat meat and they prefer a vegetarian option. The idea of having a thing that tastes like a hamburger, looks like a hamburger, feels like a hamburger, but isn't a hamburger, just weird. I don't understand why you do jerky like that. I haven't looked at it. I need to grab one and look at the ingredients, because I feel like it's going to be like, I don't know, peanuts and stuff. And it's like, well, just get a bag of peanuts.
But then it doesn't taste like jerky.
Get a bag of peanuts and soak it in Worcestershire, because that's like most of, like, Worcestershire soy sauce. Soy sauce is most of, I mean, that's, you generally speaking, that's the majority of the flavor in jerkies.
Right.
Salt, pepper, soy. You know,
teriyaki covers everything.
Or teriyaki, yeah. Just get peanuts and teriyaki sauce, and then dry them.
Or hot peppers.
Yeah. I think it's odd. All right. Well, I think that'll do it. Call it a show. Max sucks. Fuck that guy. He won't listen to it anyway. We were almost in agreement. We did a show. We reviewed the 4 ballot items, as well as my review with the 4 ballot items with Becky Massey. Be warned, you may have to put a chip in your car to pay your taxes to drive on the road. It's, anyway, I don't know. We're almostagreement at gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to our website, almostagreement.com. You can find the voter guide there, which includes that interview with Becky Massey, referenced, as well as other candidates running. I'm still working on a few more. This Paz character was really in, and then all of a sudden I just couldn't, like, he has ghosted me now, so I don't know what's going on with that. But I'll keep working on it. I'll get him in there. I'll figure it out. Go to the website, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Follow us there. Like and share it. Go to your favorite podcast provider. That's the best way to get us. Tell your friends about us. Check out the other Barbarian production, Compass Points podcast. They're smart guys that actually know what the fuck they're talking about. That's half my references on here is what they've told me. So anyway, we're almost in agreement. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great night. We'll talk to y'all soon.